In this video, we're going to take a look at some of the DHCP server settings. So I'm here on my DHCP server, and the pool of addresses the DHCP server can give out is called the scope. So you can see here I have a scope named LAN1 on the 192.168.1.0 network, and it has an address pool that runs from 192.168.1.40 to 192.168.1.100. And so this scope includes the addresses that can be issued to clients along with the subnet mask. If I go to the properties here, you can see I can adjust the addresses on a Microsoft DHCP server. You can't adjust the subnet mask. Every vendor's DHCP works a little bit differently, but they're all very, very similar. So let's go over to our client and obtain an IP address from this scope. I'm just going to go in and do an IP config release because it already has an IP address. Now it doesn't have one, and we'll do our IP config renew to ask it to obtain a new address. And there you can see 192.168.1.40. The DHCP server just gave it the very first address that's available. Let's go back to our DHCP server. For most DHCP servers, you can have just one scope for that particular network. So this scope is giving addresses from 40 through 100. What if I also wanted to give out addresses from, let's say, 200 to 250? If I go in and I try to make another new scope, I say, all right, I'd like to give out from 200 through 250. It says, no, you can't do that. You already have a scope. So how would I do that? I would do that using exclusions. So exclusions are addresses that should not be given out to clients, but we don't usually use them because we're crazy and we just want to hand out all these weird addresses. Usually they're used to identify static addresses in the network. So if we're looking at this scope, we can probably intuitively say, well, maybe 1 through 39 is in use as static addresses in this environment. But a really easy way to document this is to have the address pool run the entire range of the network and then provide exclusions, which would tell anybody looking at the DHCP address pool, those are static addresses. So we're actually going to go ahead and change our address pool. So we'll have it run from 1 to, let's say, 250. Now we'll add some exclusion. So let's take out the first 50 addresses as static addresses. So our first exclusion range will run from 192.168.1.1 to 192.168.1.50. That will give out from 51 through 100. And if you're looking at the background of the screen and you say, well, it still looks like it runs from 40 to 100, it's just because I haven't refreshed the screen. So let's just do another exclusion from 101 through 199. And then I'm just going to refresh. So now our scope runs from 1 to 250, but the DHCP server will not give out addresses from 1 to 50 or 101 to 199. So it can give out from 51 through 100 and 200 through 250. So exclusions identify static IP addresses in the environment. The DHCP server will not give out addresses that are an exclusion. Let's go over to our client and take a look at what happens now. So back on our client, let's go ahead and release this address. And then we'll renew. And you can see it picks up 192.168.1.51, which is the first available address. Now we're going to go back to our DHCP server. Exclusions are addresses the server won't give out. Another thing we see on the DHCP server are options. Options are extra information that should be given along with the IP address. So I don't know if you noticed, but a minute ago when we did IP config, that computer didn't have a default gateway. Well, if it doesn't have a default gateway in a DNS server, it's not going to have internet access. So in order for it to have those things, we would need to add in options. So let's add some options. We're going to configure option 003, which is the router. Well, that's going to be 192.168.1.1. And it's probably going to need a DNS server. And the DNS server is actually at 192.168.1.110. Perfect. So now we have two options to give to the clients. Let's go over to the client and renew to get those options and test internet access. Back on my client, and here you can see there's the results of the ipconfig renew. There was no default gateway. Let's just go ahead and run our renew again. And now you can see it's got a default gateway. Let's just try a very simple ping akamai.com. And you can see that that's successful. So that's it for this video. In this video, we looked at some of the DHCP server settings. Specifically, we looked at scopes, which is the pool of IP addresses that the DHCP server can give out. We looked at exclusions, which are addresses that the DHCP server should not give out, and they're used to document static IP addresses in the environment. And we looked at options, which is extra information that the DHCP server is going to give along with the IP address and subnet mask, things like the router for the default gateway, the DNS server, anything extra besides the IP address and subnet mask that the client needs would be done as an option.